Let's talk about this other article that you've got up. Marines conduct riot control drill. Tell us a little bit about that, and we'll play that video after you set it up.
Yeah, this was another drill, yet another drill. We've seen a spate of these in recent weeks out of Virginia, where they're basically training at the Naval Weapons Station in Yorktown, Virginia, again, to take on angry protesters. It shows Marines with batons, pepper spray, and rifles going toe-to-toe, basically, with these protesters who are throwing objects at them. And the interesting thing about this is the Marines themselves released the video. This is quite a high-quality production. And again, they say, this is only for overseas operations, yet
yeah.
They're releasing the video for the consumption of the American public.
Yeah.
If this is just a private training course, a drill for
Look,
preparation for overseas combat, why do they feel the need to put it on the internet in the first place? What kind of message does that send?
Right.
So,
Let's make it clear that the U.S. military has never operated in terms of like on the ground, in the streets, troops to control riots whenever they occupy a country. And we go in like just as the British military would do, just as the Romans would do. They get local people to do that. That's why we have the Iraqi police that they created, that they trained. So they're going to go in and they're going to not use Marines to do this kind of thing when they go into an occupied country. They're going to get some citizens who will work as police for them to do this. So this is something that they're doing to train here for America, and we should be very, very concerned that this is something that's being done by the Marines. This is not even the National Guard. I mean, we just saw the National Guard in this Richmond, California exercise, and they said it was a dirty bomb exercise. The people who videotaped that and reported on that said they didn't see any exercises where people were being helped. Merely they had crowd control exercises. And of course, there was that person that we got a videotape of, they sent to us. He started saying that I'm a sovereign citizen, you don't have any authority over me. And then at that point, they charged them and started pushing them back. So now the Marines are doing this as well. Let's run that clip. They're all masked up together. They got shields. They've got a crowd that's throwing stuff at them.
Marines
Guns,
training for riot control. That's right.
Throwing tear gas.
Marines training for riot control. Participants in this latest training exercise were the Bravo Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team Company.
Yeah, he's signing off there. That's Gary Franchi of the Next News Network, and he was the one that was the voice that you heard. That's truly amazing, but you know his conclusions, I agree with him 100%, Paul. Gary Franchi said that this is to condition the American public. I think that's a large part of what Jade Helm is about, and of course, they're coming back to Bastrop County. They're going to have another county commissioners meeting because they've already had one to give them the okay when the public didn't know about it. Now the public is upset about this in-your-face propaganda, the military training on the streets, and so they're going to have another meeting this coming Monday evening, April 27th. So people who are in Texas, we need to show up there and tell them what we think about this. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, and the key point again, the Army, the National Guard, whoever it is, they always regurgitate this idea, this talking point. This is for foreign overseas operations. And the mainstream media, again, just parrots that every single time. But if you read the Army's own manuals, which is in our article Beyond Denial, Preparations for Martial Law on InfoWars, Civil Disturbance Operations, this is a leaked 2012 Army manual, dozens of pages. It makes it clear that this training is dual purpose for, quote, dissidents within CONUS, the continental United States. Yes, it's for overseas, but it's also for domestic unrest, because if you actually dig into that manual, they talk about re-educating Americans into a new appreciation of U.S. policies within, this is a quote, within the United States or U.S. territories during civil support operations. So the Army makes it clear that this training is dual purpose. And then you place it in the wider context of what came out of the Davos Economic Forum back in January, where the economist Robert Johnson said the elites, the wealthy, are buying hideaway remote places and land in countries like New Zealand and others because they're afraid of this growing wealth inequality, a lack of faith in the political system in America, which could lead to civil unrest, like we saw in Ferguson, Missouri. So not only do the U.S. Army admit that they're preparing for this domestically, now the elite recognize this threat. That's why they're buying these secret remote hideaways in countries like New Zealand. So when you place it in that wider context, it completely eviscerates the argument that this is solely for overseas operations.
Well, and of course, as you pointed out, we see that in their documents. They talk about how this is for use CONUS and continental United States. We also had some of the documents that showed that they were talking about collecting Social Security numbers for the people that they were putting in these re-education camps. I think it's very chilling to see the drill, for example, in Fort Lauderdale, where they've got civilians that they're rounding up in the dead of night. They've got them marching them single file with soldiers on either side of them, and then putting them in white vans and then driving them away. This isn't what they do in other countries. And you know what? It isn't what we need to be training to do anyway in other countries. We need to back off of being invaders, back off of being an empire that occupies countries. We need to realize that we have never won as a government an asymmetric warfare where we are the occupying forces. Haven't won it. They readily admit that when they're talking about it back in 2005. Look that up when we went to AP Hill. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host, and we're talking to Paul Joseph Watson in the UK. We've been talking about the new video of U.S. Marines, and this is something that was not taken by citizen activists. This was something that was professionally done and released by the Marine Corps for the public to see. So we can see that they're going to use the Marines to shut down any unrest in America. If we have some kind of a natural disaster, if we have martial law declared, if we have an economic collapse, you need to prepare for your family. And one of the ways that you can do that right now is to make sure that you've got an adequate supply of food and water. Emergency food, you can get My Patriot Supply products at InfoWarsStore.com. And of course, we also have a way that you can protect yourself even if there isn't an economic collapse with pure water, and that's with the ProPure filters. Get out the fluoride that they're dumping into the water. Get out the glyphosates that you can't stop from being used by your neighbors. If you're living in a rural area, you can get 10% off of all ProPure water filters with the promo code WATER right now. So make sure you've got an adequate supply of good, clean water now and in an emergency, as well as an emergency food supply. My Patriot Supply food products available through InfoWarsStore.com. Let's go back to Paul. Now, Paul, as we were just talking about this, I think one of the things that concerns me the most is, of course, the founders of this country did not want to see a permanent standing army. They didn't want to see our government getting involved in foreign wars abroad because, as they pointed out, every time that happens, these standing armies that are fighting supposedly to protect us abroad always come back and are the means of tyranny at home. And so I'm not reassured when I see these types of things and they say, well, don't worry, we're not going to use this against you. We're only going to use it abroad. I know how that eventually turns out, even if they were to do something like that. But that is not the way they have fought these asymmetric warfare exercises. That's not the way they occupy a country. They use indigenous people as the immediate police. They come in with different kinds of military operations in these counterinsurgencies.
Yeah, and we know that the true target is eventually the American people.
Yes.
I mean, it came out a few days ago, CNN, the Missouri National Guard, and this is aside from the whole Michael Brown argument, but they identified the demonstrators there as, quote, enemy forces. That's what they described them as in their own internal memos. And then we can go back to the New Hampshire situation where they purchased that Bearcat armored vehicle. The police chief justified the purchase of the vehicle by saying they needed to deal with the threat posed by Occupy activists and libertarians, free staters in New Hampshire. So this is why we're seeing this militarization of police. And it's a massive concern, as is Jade Helm. But then you get this counter narrative, which is being seized upon by the mainstream media and used as ammunition, where, you know, these closed Walmart stores are all being turned into FEMA camps, which again is complete bunkum. There's no evidence for that. They would not build FEMA camps in public view. Mm-hmm. And yet, while that's being peddled on YouTube with hundreds of thousands of views, we have the orders, the contracts from KBR and Homeland Security from 2006, 2011, where they're contracted to build internment camps. Yet that gets ignored, the concrete meat and potatoes that you can prove, and replaced by all these wild theories about Walmarts being turned into FEMA camps.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining me from the UK is Paul Joseph Watson. And we've been talking about this video that was released showing the Marines, and it was released by our government as, I think, a PSYOP operation to get us accustomed to the idea that we've got military in the streets. I think that's a huge part of what Jade Helm is about. Joe Biggs actually got an email from one of the people that he used to serve with, who, and when we first started talking about Jade Helm, he said, be quiet, you're going to ruin the PSYOP. This is a PSYOP. So we know what they're training for. We know they're training for the American people. It's kind of like when they did a training exercise right at the border of Russia, and there was that interview with Vladimir Putin, and the guy was asking him about that, and he said, well, those aren't directed towards you, and Vladimir Putin just laughed for about 20 seconds. Come on, we know when they're training for us. We know the way they're training. We know the asymmetric warfare centers that they've got inside the military bases. We've seen the scenarios that they've talked about, and we know that there's a lot of people who are rightfully concerned about an economic meltdown. Look at this story that just came up on Infowars.com. This is from Reuters. Puerto Rican officials warn that the government shutdown there is imminent. They say that they are broke. Puerto Rico's top finance officials said the government of the U.S. territory will likely shut down in 3 months because of a looming liquidity crisis, and warned of a devastating impact on the island's economy. We look at that. We look at all the news about the war on cash, and we talked about that just yesterday with Paul Joseph Watson, how they are telling people you can't put cash in your savings deposit. They're trying to actually get cash abolished. We've got the chief economist for Citibank talking about the different ways that they can make cash disappear so they can better control the currency. Paul, your comments about Puerto Rico and where do you think this is all headed?
Well, I mean, I came on here long before the Ferguson riots and said that there are going to be riots and civil unrest inside America, and that's been proven correct. The CFR, they exhibited their concern about it last year. They said this was all part of the American distemper, in their own words. You know, we have Zbigniew Brzezinski saying there's a global political awakening, which has basically spiraled out of the control of the elite. We see these statements continually, again, out of Davos. Robert Johnson said that the elite are buying hideaways in New Zealand to prepare for mass unrest as a result of wealth inequality and this lack of faith in the political system. You know, Congress record low approval ratings, and they're genuinely concerned about it. So people should get beyond the denial, but also have discernment in not thinking that because Walmart closed these 5 stores across the country for reasons of, in one case in California, it was to oppose unionization and the employees trying to get better pay and working conditions. Don't then conflate that with all this documented evidence of preparation for martial law. Because, you know, 2 police cars parked outside a closed Walmart doesn't mean that they're going to turn it into a FEMA camp. It means that they're guarding the stock from looters because there's nobody there. There's no staff there.
Sure.
So we've got the admitted examples of where they're contracted to build these internment facilities. That kind of gets ignored and dismissed.
Then I tell you what's interesting, Paul, is that they keep...
And then the media seizes upon it, and it's like, oh, look at what the tinfoil hatters are saying now, Walmart FEMA camps. They do the same trick every single time.
And what we're going to hear, I know when they have this Jade Helm 15 meeting in Bastrop County, we're going to hear that we do this kind of training all the time. We all know that this is not customary. We all know that this hasn't been going on all the time. And very few people know. We reported it here at InfoWars, but it was last summer that the Pentagon shut down a program giving surplus equipment to fire departments. They shut it down for about a month. They said they were going to discontinue it. They've been doing that for 60 years. And at the same time, they couldn't get enough MRAPs and armored personnel carriers into the hands of people who had arresting authority. That's what Section 1033 was. So they wanted to shut it down to the fire department and give it to the people who could arrest citizens.
Used since before the days of the Roman Empire to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfoWarsLife.com oil of oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients essence, extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules. You will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.